Okay, I think we should go ahead and get started. Hi, everyone. My name is Mackenzie Stevens. I'm the director of the Visual Arts Center. I'm pleased to welcome our two guests today, Luiz Roque and Adam Miller. Before we begin, I'd like to mention a few housekeeping things. We will leave ample time at the end of the conversation for Q&A. Please feel free to add questions to the Q&A function or the chat box while the conversation is underway. Adam will field questions at the end of the conversation. The presentation will be recorded and added to our website on the events page. Luiz Roque lives and works in São Paulo, Brazil. Roque's work is sensuous and vibrant, propels us to imaginary, fantasy-laden spaces. Luscious and also foreboding, his videos are dystopic and ominous. Roque's captivating dreamscapes are composed of beautiful and slick imagery, and yet his works also contend with weighty and pressing topics: equity, gender, sexuality, race, class, legacies of colonialism, and the list goes on. Roque has had solo exhibitions at venues throughout the world, most recently at the Visual Arts Center. And I should add that Luiz's exhibition is on view through March 27th, so don't miss it. Last year at Pivo in Sao Paulo and CAC Passerelle in Brest. In 2019, he was included in the Screen Series at the New Museum in New York. In 2018 at the Mac Niederoy in Rio de Janeiro, Mendes Wood, amongst others. His work has been included in group exhibitions at the BWA Galleries of Contemporary Art, the Maison Populaire in Paris, MAM in Sao Paulo, venues in Quito and Milan, MASFI in Sao Paulo, the Sao Paulo Biennial, MoMA PS1, and many more. Adam Miller is the two-time recipient of the Race and Gender in the Built Environment Fellowship at UT Austin's School of Architecture, where he currently teaches architectural design and theory. He is also the director of New Stars, a collaborative design group that produces stage designs and installations. Miller's research investigates the relationship between taste, power, and identity through the lens of the queer body and queer architecture. Thank you both for joining us today, and now I'll turn it over to you. Thanks so much.
Thank you so much, Mackenzie. I'd like to say thank you to Luis, of course, for joining us today, taking time to chat with us. I'd like to say thank you to Mackenzie Stevens, Director of the Visual Arts Center, and to Donato Loya, Curatorial Fellow, for inviting me to have this wonderful conversation. Thanks to the Visual Arts Center itself, the Department of Art and Art History, and the Department of Architecture. So thank you. This dialogue is called Cruising Modernity, Queering Monumentality, and we will discuss a series of 4 of Luiz's films. We'll have 15 minutes per film to have a discussion, and we'll leave 15 minutes at the end for a question and answer session. So the first, I'd like to just promote the event itself, for which we're having a dialogue about. It's Luiz Roque, República. This is an installation view at the Visual Arts Center at the University of Texas at Austin. It is currently open. You can go there live in person. You can see these things as a living, breathing human being. It's open from February 5th to March 27th. Please go visit it. It's very good. This photo is by Sandy Carson. I'd like to start with showing a film by Luis, which prefigures some of this work that you see in the show. This film is titled Modern, and it's from 2014. It's a 4-minute film. It was filmed on 16mm film and then transferred to video. And I'd like to show this one in part because it's not included in the show, but because it shares thematic concerns that I believe are present in all of the films in the show. that are relevant to our discussion. So first I'll start with the video and then we'll ask a question. Thank you. I hope the video came through okay. I know it's difficult to show video on Zoom. We're doing our best. So I'd like to now turn to asking Louise a question. Louise, what does the word modern mean to you?
I made this film when I was doing a residency in London at the Delfina Foundation specifically. And I have this obsession with this performer called Lee Bowery. And so I was in London. Lee Bowery was an icon in the Londoner club scene in the 80s and beginning of 90s. And then at some point, I remember I visited Tate Gallery, and then I saw this Henry Moore reclined figure. And I was very, very, very into Lee Bowery at the time, like watching the same documentary many times. And I had this kind of click that I could approach these two figures to make a kind of a ritual or dance or something. And then what modern means to me, I know that I remember when I was thinking titles are a very important part of the work for me. I just understand a work, a film or a work when I decide the title. And I remember that I shot at Tate Gallery, where this room is located at. And I remember I shot at the Tate Gallery, but I was dealing with Lee Bowery, and which was like a kind of and then you have like the Tate Gallery and you have the Tate Modern. It was like a joke with the name of the institutions. And then yes, but what modern means to me, I don't know how to answer this question, because modernism in Brazil is like a very heavy word, because we have Brasilia and we have this architect called Oscar Niemeyer. I live in a building designed by Oscar Niemeyer, like a Copa building, like a treasure in a way of Brazilian modernism. So for me, it's like it's difficult, because it's like my life is very involved in the idea of how to live in a modern building, how to live in a modern way. And I can say, like, not related to modern, but to live here in this building, at Copa building, for me is like a kind of maybe like a communist experience in a way. So the best thing I can say about Brazilian modernism in terms of architecture is, for me, is like brings to me like a kind of communist experience in terms of living. But I don't know if I answered your question.
No, you absolutely did. I feel like all of your work, my reading of it at least, it's dealing with various scales of modernism. For me, I'm reading this particular film, the scale of the modern body in relationship to art, the institution of the art gallery, and what is permissible in the art gallery, what is permissible by certain people.
I did not ask permission to Tate Gallery to record that scene, because that's an important part of the work. Because if I will wait for the answer, institutional answers, I probably do nothing, because institutions are so like complex, and it has to be, because like it's a structure. But just a parenthesis. Sorry.
I think that's actually really important to this piece, the fact that you're depicting a kind of transgression of how one is meant to behave in this institutional space, and you actually that was part of the process of producing it as well. Something that I find quite interesting about the imagery here is that it feels very sexualized. It feels like there's a liberation of the body and of the self through relations with others in transgressive ways. These kinds of transgressive, erotically charged relations in spaces. For the discussion in architecture, there's been writing on what queer space might be, and there's not a complete consensus. But one of the most famous books on the subject matter was called Queer Space. It was written in the late 90s by Aaron Betsky. And within the book, queer space is quite often equated with spaces of orgasm or spaces of eroticism, erotic pleasure, the freedom of that encounter and the ephemerality of that encounter. Whereas, so I'm just wondering, For you, I'm just wondering, can queer space exist without the erotic, or is it central to queer experience?
I think the answer is not, because queer, I refuse to use the word queer in my work, because for me queer is a very North American European study. So queer, if I can, but I'm just like doing like a observation, because I think like the queer studies, because they're very much like focused in North American Europe, do not like embrace some experience we live down here in South America in terms of religion and everything. So I understand what you say about like queer body, but we here in Brazil, we are still like realizing how to use this word queer. There is a version with like C in the beginning, but I don't feel very comfortable. But observation done. I think the answer is not, because eroticism, that's such a word, eroticism. I think, what was your question again? If it's the queer space without the erotic?
The question is, can queer or non-normative space,
okay,
for
we can use queer, it's fine.
Oh, for sure. Can queer space exist without the erotic?
Yes. I've lost. I think no, Adam, because I think the erotic is a kind of a way to confront conservative thoughts, and what I expect in terms of us as community, that you can like reinvent a new word, because this one we are living, we are experiencing is not like working, especially for us, for LGBTQ plus people. So, and I think the eroticism is a very important, because yes, we can confront like the conservative minds, I think, especially here in Brazil, the moment we're living, like the government you already heard about. I think it is, and I like this idea to play, how can I say, not softly in terms of erotic, but not explicit. I'm not very interested in like explicit sex, even though I like it, I watch it, I consume. But in my work, for me, it's like I don't think I'm doing like my best showing like explicit sex. So I like this idea of the erotic, about what you do not show, but what you suggest, which is sometimes is pretty much.
I think that's a great answer, and I think it'll help bridge us into the next film, which I'm going to show from the show, which is S, the film S. Cool. So I'll quickly switch over to the film itself. Give me a moment here.
We're going to show an extract from S, right?
Yes, we're going to show part of the film, not the entire film, just for purposes of time. So we're discussing themes of transgression against different institutions. The first film, Modern, dealt with the institution in some way of the modern art gallery, and that's my reading of it. here in S, the film depicts a choreographed and subversively signed message of revolution, a message delivered by queerly coded performers of various races, moving from a subterranean space to the surface, where a performer is face up in the snow, accumulating the whiteness of the snow until their face is fully erased, made white, until the end when the face melts that very snow and awakens. All of these shots are very beautiful and clean. There is a cleanliness to your work, a beauty that under the surface seems to convey a very political message. So I have a question thinking about this in relationship to a history of queer art that also carries political messages of revolution. I'm thinking of our shared interest in the work of John Waters, the filmmaker from the 70s, who had an interest in shock and disgust, and depicted the lifestyles of queer and trans people who did not behave properly according to what society deemed as norm. My question in relation to your film S, and thinking about it in terms of this history of queer art of revolution, is can beautiful art be revolutionary or political? Or does revolution require the grotesque or messy or the shocking?
I never, what did you say, the last, or revolution?
Can beautiful art be revolutionary, or does it need to be messy or shocking?
I do believe in beauty. I really like this idea of beauty. So where is the when I decide to film someone, when I invite someone, a performer like Dana Lisboa, the one you are seeing right now, I remember I was like I went to see her performance. I don't remember when exactly, but I was like mesmerized by her figure. And so for me, I was like petrified, like about beauty. Beauty is a good word. And then I invite her to make a part in the film. And asking your question is, I really like John Waters' work. I really like it. But I think it's interesting that you paired like the stills from both films, because I think I work in the opposite way than John Waters. And then the answer is I do believe in beautiful art as revolutionary, because we are in the time who cinema and cinema, especially cinema recently understood that we need to review protagonisms, you know, because the world has changed, so we cannot like be in that kind of standard of beauty, you know. And then I think I got confused, but answer your question, the answer is yes.
Great. Yes, I think that you demonstrate that through your work.
Yes. I'm better like doing my work than talking about it.
Right. So I'll just go to the next slide here, just to show another comparison where as you mentioned, you're working in sort of an aesthetically opposite way, which is something that I noticed, but I see that you share a political message. In the image on the left, this is a still from S, where the performer is using sign language to convey a message. This message has a revolutionary tone to it, and it is derived from a writing by Jota Mombasa, who is
Yes,
also
she's
Brazilian.
amazing.
Yeah,
Amazing.
an amazing, beautiful writer and artist. So here I'm interested in how we are meant to, who is meant to receive this message, and how are we meant, how can we decode the message, and who is the message for? Is it for queers themselves to receive this message of uh, social change and a new dream of a new utopia? Is it for the straight public? Who is this message for, and how are we meant to receive it?
I think this message is very, in a way, I think this message wants to reach like the majority of society, you know, because it's not just about, like, Jota is not just talking to we as LGBTQ community to the rest of the world. There is this message also to inside the community, you know, because well, there are levels of privileges. Even though I'm a gay man, there is levels of privilege that I experience that Jota does not. And it's interesting about, like, I like this conversation inside the community, you know, because even though I think there is, even though like sometimes one think that we could be more unite in a way to achieve like bigger things. But the beautiful thing, one of the beautiful things about the LGBTQ plus community is like the complexity of the debate, you know, because if you are looking or thinking about like new or different types of word better, for sure the conversation is the conversation is new. So the answer your question, maybe this message is also for me, for you, you know. Yes, yes, but yes, I'm with Jota. We discussed a lot about how to translate and how to translate like her text to the sign language. Yes, we have worked together. I consulted her for sure, and yes.
That's great. That's really interesting. I'm also, I'd like to ask you about the means of conveying this message. For you, you're conveying it through beautiful imagery, imagery that for me, it's pleasurable to watch. I'm pleased to watch your artwork. For me, it seems like you're working through subversion rather than explicit um, language or an explicit message. Um, what's the use of subversive language in your work?
Subversive. When you say subversive, you mean that which is not like the standard, maybe, or
Yes, it's going against the grain, but in a subtle way.
yes,
Working in a subtle way.
Yes. I do believe I work in a sort of way, but in my mind sometimes I think that I just gave an interview to the Pivot. The Pivot was this art space in São Paulo where I did this a version of the exhibition that you can see in Austin. And then I gave an interview to Agrippina Manhattan, an artist based in Rio de Janeiro. And then we're talking about like this kind of. I think I work in a subtle way, but sometimes the films they pretend or they want to be like the mainstream. So I like this idea. I like the aesthetic of the mainstream, but with about LGBTQT plus community. I like this. I like to emulate like the mainstream aesthetic, but then like to bring another characters, another protagonists, another stories, another narratives, more or less. Yes.
I think that's an interesting tactic to be able to communicate a message to a more mainstream audience when you're using the sort of imagery or the aesthetic that is pleasurable to a mainstream audience. Therefore, you can slip in messages that you may not have otherwise been able to get that audience's attention to listen to. I'd like to go to, I'm gonna have to skip over a couple things.
Yes, and just like finishing what I said, I think there is this, I like to produce this kind of, I like to produce images with appeal, you know, like, I like to invite the audience to watch the films. And then once you are there, you can talk about everything, you know, but I like to be, first of all, I like to invite people to come. I like to invite people to watch. Maybe because these, like, the films are not that long, because I'm assuming that people will watch the film twice or 3 times, you know. So maybe because this, like, I put lots of references, because I think, like, in the second view, you can find different things than the first time you saw it.
I agree. I think there's different ways to reach different audiences using different aesthetic tactics, and I think you demonstrate that. I'd like to move on to showing part of the film Xero. I'm going to have to kind of cut out a little bit of content just so we can make time for questions at the end. So I'm going to share my screen for Xero now, which is in the show. So I just wanted to ask about your interest in these different aesthetic means of communicating. It seems like you have an interest in abstraction, while simultaneously an interest in the figure of the human body and the relationship between that across scales. In Xero, you show us the scale of the architecture, this beyond human comprehension, monumental architecture. And on the right, we have the ocean, images of the ocean from República, which are being narrated by the experience of a travestis. So something I noticed throughout your work is this interest in abstraction. And we can also see it here in S. And so I'd like to ask you about this, what is the role of abstraction in your work? And what is the use of abstraction in your work?
I think abstraction in my work, we back to the subject of beauty. Because sometimes I just want to produce images that in fact, like, I think every single artist could say the same, but I produce image that I would like to to see, that I would like to watch. And then sometimes abstraction gives me this freedom in a way, you know, like just to observe like a beautiful thing, like a beautiful surface, like nature, the sea, the sky, clouds, and then I bring to the work in a way to sometimes to create links between scenes, sometimes just because the loop dynamic is very important to answer your question, because as there is no like beginning or end when you go to an exhibition where I'm showing my work, and then you enter in a room, you're gonna see like one image. We don't know, like minute 3, 3, 9, 10, 4. And then sometimes I create these abstractions because I want to give the audience some space, you know, like to get in the room and then to make yourself comfortable. And yes, so abstraction first works for me as like a vision of beauty. And secondly, to put some rhythm and something. And yes, and you choose like 2 images that I really like, this reflection of the water in the lake, and then the reflection of the light in this building.
Yeah, I'm mesmerized by these shots of reflections, and you deployed the reflections in multiple films, which I think are effective.
Yes, I really like it. I really like the shape of light is very well, in a way, if there is some.
Absolutely. I wanted to ask you one final question about your interest across different scales between sculpture and architecture and the human body, and where in terms of how your work animates sculptures and turns bodies into little architectures or little sculptures and vice versa. What's the meaning for you?
Okay. Specifically, this image we're looking at is like in the left side. Well, the sculpture you see is a replica from a modern artist from Brazil called Franz Weissman. This is a replica from his sculpture, like Cube or something like that, from the 50s. And then I decide to put this sculpture in movement, because as in this film that you can see at VAC, it's I shot in the subway of São Paulo city. So there is this idea of like, there is, S is about like the city, how we, what is the engines of the city, you know? So I decided to put this sculpture in movement in a way like to emulate a machine, but there is also a dancer like spinning same way. So like what the engines of the city is like more humans and less machines. And even though São Paulo is a super like a metropolis, a super like a high technological city in a way, as a Brazilian city can be. But this is one thing. Your question was about like how I approach human body to sculpture in a way.
Yes.
Well, there are many reasons I can tell you. First one, I'm very into like fashion magazines images, which if you well, in my what I feel when I see models like in an advertisement, a fashion magazine, because like the static of image, because it's photo for sure, but you can see sculptures, you can see like people posing as statues in a way, more than sculptures maybe. And then this is one thing. There is another thing that I can like, to see or to think the human body as sculpture, as to think the human body as an invention, something that we can create, because sculpture is something someone creates, some artist or someone creates a sculpture, and then like to see the human body as sculpture is something like that, you know, like a place or a matter that we can mold, you can do whatever we want, the shape we want, the size we want, and the way we want. And there is pretty much linked to the LGBTQT plus community in a way, in terms of medicine and yes, the whole story, you know, like our body, our rules.
Yeah, I think that's really well said. There's a lot of empowerment in that concept of understanding ourselves and our own bodies as something that we can craft into a different image, and that this body that we're given is not, it can be considered as a sculpture. It doesn't have to be considered as this natural, fixed, stable thing. It's something that we can craft for a better kind of future. For
yes, and create and be whatever we want to be. You know,
that's great. Also, I you know, a lot of people probably know this this figure here. So,
because he's a famous porn star.
Exactly.
Blessed boy. And then if you watch the film is, if you don't have a chance to go to the VAC, this film is in my Instagram, the link, you can watch the whole film. Well, at VAC is another experience, because the film is a round projection, is another thing. But in fact, this guy, he's a famous porn star in Brazil called Blessed Boy. And then I decide to, how can I say, because his body is uber sexualized, especially the gay men community sexualize his body a lot. I decide to create a costume with my costume designer that I used to work with, Alex Casimiro, that we don't like, there is no the presence of how can I say in English? This is like we made a suit that you cannot see any like trace of a dick or penis or something.
Oh yeah.
Because
would you like me to show that briefly?
Yeah, sure.
Okay, I'll just show it briefly, and then
yes, please.
Visualize what you're talking about. Okay. So this is what you're talking about here.
Yes.
Yeah, it's interesting because it's desexualizing his overly sexualized body, as you mentioned.
Yes, and the idea, like, I think the film, we are talking about desire, but there is this phallocentric culture, especially in gay men community, you know, that I would like to avoid if I'm talking about desire. If I invite like a Twitter porn star to join the film, I don't want to reproduce these ideas, you know, like these ideas of like big dicks or something like that, you know, like to put like, to center his figure in the idea of sex. We can sexualize a body without to think about like penis or something like that.
Yeah, I think it's a great way to like to see our own desire for figures like this when we have to see them in a new light. It's almost like a mirror back on ourselves to recognize the way that we are preconceiving certain individuals. So I'm going to stop sharing, and I want to make some time for questions.
Okay. There are some.
We have some questions. So I'm just reading through them quickly.
Okay.
I'll start with this one from Ellis Davenport. I'll read it. You include famous figures in your work, such as Dana Lisboa and Blessed Boy. Why are you drawn to work with celebrity or LGBTQ celebrities?
Good, because in my work and my films, LGBTQT plus people are the only one who exists. So I don't need to draw a critique to a patriarchal society, and then I don't need to show like what I'm criticizing in a way, you know. I just want to work with my people, the stars we made. So, and I really like to work with this celebrities, this local celebrities. No, Blessed Boy is not. Both of them are not local celebrities, but I like to work with LGBTQ2 plus celebrities because my work do believe in this kind of fandom. You know, there is the only word which exists.
That's a great answer. This is another related question from Neil Flynn. What is the casting process like for you? Is there a part of the production process that you prefer to be less involved in, or do you have a hand in all parts of the production?
There is no test like screen test or nothing like this. Usually, some of the characters, the actress and actors in my films, they are my friends or became my friends. Some are people who I'm looking at, and then at some point I invite them to make a part in a film. There is I never ever made like a test and then like, oh sorry, you did great, but we're not work with you. This is not my idea. So my process like to accompany the work of some performer, because most of them are performers in terms of dance. I see and yes. And then I invite them. That's the process.
Sounds like fun.
Yes.
I'll ask another question from Deirdre Smith. Has the pandemic changed the art scene in your space, and how?
I don't know if the pandemic or the election of Bolsonaro in 2018, because the pandemic was like not a detail. I'm talking about the art scene, right? But the art scene since the election of this thing, we are experiencing like a very tough time, and then the pandemic came, and then I don't know, but I think good things will come. I think the new generation of Brazilian artists right now, they are furious because there is nothing to lose, and for art this is amazing. So I'm very optimistic about this new generation of artists, you know. But the situation is horrible.
I think I'll just ask one final question. This is also from Ellis Davenport. Why do you associate the word queer with North America or Europe? And what Brazilian concepts or ideas do you work with instead, and why?
Well, because queer is a North Hemisphere academic theory, and I'm not saying I don't use queer, but I don't consider myself as queer. We have another words here like bicha that we use a lot, because in my case, like a queer gay man, we can call here like a bicha. And then I think I'm not a theorist, first of all, but what I feel is that there are many aspects in the LGBTQT plus life in Brazil that are not embraced by queer studies, like Afro-Brazilian religions and something like that. But I'm not a theorist, so but I don't feel comfortable to use like queer, because we are rather very colonized here in Brazil to put like more. If you are in a space of freedom, which is like to be like gay, lesbian, trans, and then here in Brazil, and then we import like English words. I don't feel comfortable. But yes, I don't know.
That's great. That's very helpful, because here it doesn't have that kind of connotation for you. Here it's a term that has been reclaimed by our communities. It used to be a term of a slur. It was a way to
yes.
Here it has a different connotation. So it's really great to learn these new terms like bicha, which are
bicha, bichona, yeah, viado. Yes, viado is deer.
That's great.
The animal, yes.
Oh yeah, the deer. That's cool.
But I'm not against, guys. I'm not against queer. I'm not against queer studies. I'm just like I don't think I think we have like Portuguese like is a huge.
Mm-hmm.
We have like a huge dictionary. We can find like words in our language to describe ourselves, you know. Mm-hmm. But I really understand how the word queer works in specifically in the United States. I really do, and yes.
Well, thank you. I've learned a lot from talking to you and from watching your films. It's been an absolute pleasure to speak with you. And everyone, please go see the show at the Visual Arts Center. It's open until March 27th. Thank you all. Thank you, Mackenzie. Thank you to the VAC, and thank you to Luiz Roque, and to all of you watching. Take care.
Thank you very much. And if you have a chance, please visit the show, and then you can see like a work I've made that I just saw pictures like this sculpture like. So please come if you can.
Thank you. Congratulations, Luiz.
Tchau, tchau.
Ciao.
Beijos. Tchau.
Bye.